Hey everybody, and welcome to Rapid's Ramblings, podcast 426. I don't have much to say this time. I have just a little bit to say about Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, and then a little bit to say about the altars, and that's it for this time. Hopefully you'll enjoy the show. So Clair Obscur was the second big game I got the month of Game Pass for after Doom: The Dark Ages, and I would say it is probably very far in the lead for Game of the Year, and I'm not just saying that because, I love it and it's my kind of game, because it's not. I actually don't really play JRPG style games. This is one of maybe 2 or 3 JRPG style games I have played ever in my whole life. So there it is. Everybody says it has a really great story and amazing artwork and an insane soundtrack, and it does. I can confirm all these things, and this is why I decided to play it, even though JRPG is not my style. Basically, you are leading a group of characters through an expedition. I think at most you hit 5 characters to pick from, though your party will only be comprised of 3 people fighting at any given time. And when you get into a fight, it goes into a sort of turn-based style. I say sort of because when it is your turn, you can literally put down the controller and walk away for as long as you want and nothing will happen. But when it is the enemy turn, they will jump at you and do different attacks, and you can dodge or block or parry or do a special kind of block later on in the game. And so when it's the enemy turn, you still want to pay attention and be pretty active, because if you don't block and parry and dodge, it will go much worse for you. I actually started it on regular difficulty, and then after I think maybe an hour, I turned it down to easy because it was just brutal at those lower levels, and it's not my kind of game, as I said. So I was just playing it for story and looking at the various art and listening to the music, and so I really didn't care about having a super difficult combat. But pretty quickly, your characters get more powerful and it gets a lot easier around level 25. So I probably could have turned it back up. At that point, I was just like, I'll just keep going on easy just to get it done, because it does get kind of repetitive pretty quickly. You will notice, if you pay attention, that the bad guys' movement patterns are very similar between different kinds of bad guys. So I know there's a layer of the game I was not paying attention to, which is what the bad guy resistances are and what they're vulnerable to and all that stuff. But I did notice that several of the melee guys were like an attack, pause, attack kind of combo, and you could pretty much get used to that pretty quickly. Like I said, there is a dodge and parry/riposte system built in. Most of the game I just dodged because, again, I'm not really super into those kind of games, and it seemed like some of the things you could parry and do a counterattack for, and some you just couldn't. You would just parry and it would block it, and that would be it. So that seemed really kind of confusing to me, and so I ignored it through most of the game. But if you can figure out which ones are parryable and counterattack with, you can do some really insane damage. So I would recommend checking that out if you are even remotely good at it, or remember much better than me, because I would never remember which ones could or couldn't be blocked most of the time. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I don't think I got any footage of it because I didn't want to put any spoilers in, and then I just kind of forgot after that, I think. If I did, it will be up on the video. If not, I will be running something else for footage. I would highly recommend it at $40. I don't know what it is, actual price. I do think it is cheaper because it's an indie company. This was their first thing they've ever made, and this is actually insane how good it is for their first game ever. And it's not like this is, hardcore industry vets who have left their company of 50 years to make this first game. No, these are people who pretty much are either straight out of college or have not made a game at all before. Like the musician had put his demo up on a music site which apparently no longer exists. And so he joined the company having never, actually produced any music except for, the stuff he did for himself. And it was pretty much the same thing with the writer. She'd only produced stuff for herself and never actually published anything. So the fact that this game is this good is really insane. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it swept all of the Game of the Year awards when it comes to be that time. You can also get it on Game Pass. That's obviously how I did it. And I would definitely recommend it there if you want to go, the not owning it forever cheaper route. I think it took me about 25 hours to complete Clair Obscur Expedition 33 on the easy difficulty setting, and I didn't do a lot of side stuff. I know there's a lot of side bosses and collectible collecting you can do, so you could easily sink a lot more time into that, but I would say expect about 25 hours as a minimum. The next game I got a reasonable peek at was The Altars, which in some ways was quite a bit different than I expected. When I played the demo of it, I kind of got the impression that you'd build this massive base and you'd have, tons of different guys doing all these different jobs, and that is actually not the case. I got to the mid-50s, I think, in terms of how many days in-game I played, and I only had unlocked 5 total clones, so that is, nowhere near what I was thinking would happen. And I think by endgame, you'll only get maybe 2 or 3 more than that. So there are very few people that will be in your base with you. Pretty much the required ones are the technician, which is part of the tutorial. And then I would recommend you start out with the scientist after that, because he's the only one who can do any research. And you need to research all the things, and he has to do them all the time. And that's kind of the biggest issue I had with it, is because they kind of only do one thing. The technician is good at fixing the base, and then he could do, whatever else. But pretty much he has to fix the base all the time, kind of like the scientist has to do research all the time. Because anytime they're not doing it, it's going to delay everything else you need to do, and somebody else has to do that thing that they are not doing, which the scientist is the only one who can research, so if you're not researching, you're pretty screwed. And so for me, who is not a huge sim player, I've played, similar to JRPGs, very few sim games in my life. I think probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6. Yeah, there's the Dungeon Keeper series back in the day, so probably closer to 6 to 10 total in my whole life, which is still, not very many. But it's like you've got the technician set to fix the base, and then sometimes he'll get free of that, and then you'll tell him to build stuff, which you're always building stuff because you're always using stuff up. And then the scientist is always sciencing, and then what's left? Well, you've got to go gather all these resources and do everything else, so you're doing that yourself. So if you are doing anything but going out and gathering resources, you're not getting resources. And so it just became this huge messy loop where it's like I was always needing resources because people were doing other things. And if I told them to go get the resources, then they weren't doing the original things they were supposed to do. And so I would need to do that. So it became pretty stressful for me. I did put it on easy, I think. But it seemed to me like there was never enough guys to do all the things I needed to do, which, I suppose is part of the fun of sim games, but I found it very stressful, and then they would complain at you about not doing the things, and it's like, well, I don't have the resources to do the things, that's why I'm not doing the things. But overall, it was a pretty cool game. It is just as much about managing your altar's mood and doing things to make them feel better and stay healthy as it is doing stuff and exploring the world. And it was a cool mix. I am, however, very hesitant to pick it up and continue playing again because I got stuck in a bad place and I'll have to rewind the game, which thankfully is really generous in a way. It saves every morning on an autosave, so you can't manually save it, but it does save every morning. And it isn't until you get into your 50s that it starts to warn you that it's going to run out of auto space and it's going to start deleting older games. But, I never got past the mid-50s. So at one point, when I lost the game, I'm like, well, I think I can go back about 4 days and salvage that, and so I did. And then I lost it again a little bit later, and I'm like, well, I can go back maybe 2 weeks and salvage it, and so I did that, and then I salvaged it again, and then I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I can see this in about a week and a half. I'm going to run out of resources, and everything's going to go really badly, so I may as well just rewind further. And so I went all the way back from day 55 to day 12, and so I replayed a lot of time back to get back up to the 50s, and then I got to another point where I was just stuck again, and I'm like, well, at this point, I've got Game Pass for less than 24 hours, and it's not gonna finish. But yeah, I liked it quite a bit. It was very cool and science fiction-y and fun to explore and do the various things the first time through. Repeating it, it's always going to be the same, though, so I don't know how fun it is to repeat it. Like I said, the one time I got to the mid-50s in terms of game days, and then I rewound to day 12, and I pretty much picked all the same conversations and options as before, so I was basically just redoing everything I'd done, just, slightly more efficient and faster, hopefully. Clearly it wasn't enough, because I still got stuck again. But if somebody said, hey, I will buy this for you today, I would be like, let's wait. Let's get it on sale, because I would not be looking forward to replaying it a third time, let alone probably a fourth or fifth time, which is probably what it would take for me to get through, because I'm not great at these games. So if you are into sim games, which like I said, I am not, I just do them very casually, I would recommend it. But like I said, when you play through it again, I don't think it's as replayable as something like Frostpunk or maybe the 2-point games like 2-Point Hospital and such, because those seem like there's a lot more randomization of what's going on, whereas this is a static map, and then you move to another static map, and then you move to another static map. So the map is always going to be the same each time. All of the drops of stuff you want to find is going to be the exact same every time. And even in one of my playthroughs, I remember, I had a mine here. I just went boop, 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 scanned it once, and then it's like, yep, that's exactly where the mine goes. So you're basically just playing against yourself more than anything else. With a replay, you have to do it, faster, better, more efficient. Maybe you'll pick a different altar you think will work out better. But overall, I would say it's kind of repeating the same motions, if that makes sense. Like I said, I wouldn't be super interested in replaying it for a while. I may eventually pick it up and finish it, but I do think I dropped at least 20 or 25 hours when I'd heard it only takes like 15 to 20 to finish. I don't know if that's a single playthrough, no mistakes, no nothing, and you add in learning curve like me, and you're probably talking 20, 30, 40 hours plus. I don't know. I do not know what they said that was based on now, because certainly it was not the case for me to finish in like 15 hours, because I definitely played more than that. But I would definitely recommend it at $40, maybe a little bit more if you are into sim games. But like I said, the replayability is probably not all that great due to its static nature. but I had a really good time with how long I had it for. So that's it for this podcast. I guess I was mistaken about the Destiny 2 release date. I thought it was the middle of June, but I guess it is the middle of July, so I probably will not have that to talk about on next podcast. Next podcast will probably come just before then, so I have no idea what I will talk about next time. In the meantime, before the big Destiny 2 new content comes up, Elder Scrolls Online did get a year content start about a month ago. Haven't actually had any time to really look at it, so I don't know what's going on there. I do remember it didn't seem super exciting to me, but I was, as always, looking forward to more ESO content. So maybe I'll talk about that next time, but I don't think so, because it's an MMO, and usually they don't have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. It's just more of, ooh, this is pretty cool, and they just keep doing it year after year. But whatever I talk about next time, hopefully I'll see everybody then. Okay, thanks, bye. Put it on easy, I think. I vaguely recall if there was a difficulty setting or not. I think so. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. I put it on easy. So if you are into sim.
You have been listening to Rabbit's Ramblings. If you would like to see the show notes or feed the bunny by sending a donation, you can find the show website at www.rabbit.com/podcast/rabbitsramblings.html. When you type Rabbit's Ramblings, don't use a space. If you would like to send me an email, you can do so at rabbit@rabbit.com. If you like my page, you can also post on Facebook at rabbit.com. You can follow me on YouTube at rabb1t's. I have a page on Patreon at www.patreon.com/rabbit, RABB1T. You can set up a monthly recurring subscription there at a price point of your choice. Be sure to put the number 1 in place of I anytime you type rabbit.
Rabbit's Ramblings is copyright Eric Stryker, using a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Derivatives License 2025.